Are we live?
We are live.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are waiting for 6:30. We're just doing some final sound checks. So if you're listening now, we are just checking our sound. How are we doing for sound? Have you got YouTube on? Yeah, okay. And the sound's good? Yeah. Cool. Cool, nice. Hey everyone. How you doing? Hello. Take a seat. There's 9 seats. I think there's 8 or 9 people. So make sure Paul's not got his laptop. Someone can do the lab with him. Who's left? Josie.
Yeah.
I love how no one's gone at the front. That's like the psychology of doing it. If we didn't set any chairs out at the front, then it would be fine.
Just the one line.
Just the one line.
Yeah, true.
We've currently got 3 viewers online. Big crowds today. Hello, 3 viewers. Sorry, Anna. I know you're one. Shout out.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, Anna will be there. Pardon? I think he'll be running. I don't think he's going to join us. There's plenty of space at the front there. Are we good, Jake? Have we got people online? Have we got everything going? Yeah, he's got like a 20-second delay because he's watching the stream to make sure that. So he's going to hear that in a sec. Are we good? Online's good. Everything's streaming.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, sweet. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to DevOps Playground. For those of you that haven't been to one before, the DevOps Playground is a monthly event run by a group of people and sponsored by Global Logic. Today, it's called a DevOps Playground, but there's loads of different concepts. Sometimes it's development, sometimes it's DevOps, testing, things like that. For mine and Charlie, our playground, we're going to be doing some TypeScript, JavaScript, Redux, React, but without Redux or React. So we'll get to that in a sec. But for now, I'll pass over to Charlie. If I can fix the mic.
So perfect. Hey guys, so like Tom said, we're going to be doing the introduction to managing global state with Redux. And my name's Charles Kearney. I'm a software engineer at Global Logic, and I specialise in full stack TypeScript development. And it's the same with Tom Broad. And so what is Redux? So Redux, it's a powerful open source state management library that can be used with any framework. It can be used with React, it can be used with Vue, or it can be used with Angular. And just for context, application state management is just the process of controlling and managing the data that an application displays and uses to its users. And in this presentation, we're just going to explore how Redux provides a predictable and centralized way to handle this state management. So a little bit of oversight on the history. Redux was created by Dan Abramov and Andrew Clark. And you might actually know Andrew Clark because he was one of the core contributors to React and Next.js. And Redux was released in June 2015. And it was originally inspired by Andrew Clark's one of his previous ventures, which was Flux, which was created with Facebook. They both have a similar interest in believing to create a simple way to maintain unidirectional data flow. And if you would like the link to the GitHub repo, just GitHub repo, github.com/Redux.js. So the 3 core principles of Redux, there's a single source of truth, the state is read-only, and changes are made with pure functions. Just a note on the last one, changes are made with pure functions is the main difference between Flux and Redux, as Flux itself uses event emitters, where Redux uses pure functions. And just with single source of truth, this is referring to the Redux store, which in its sense is just a large JavaScript object that holds all the data centralized in the application. And in this store, the state is read-only. In the sense it means for any developers out there, it's immutable, which means it cannot change. So if you would like to make any changes to the state, you take a copy of the store at that point, do the action, which do the logic, which changes some of the state, and that's your new version. So why use Redux? Main benefits to using Redux: predictable state management. It follows a known form, so you know exactly how the state's going to be changing. And just like I said previously, as it's a centralized data storage, there's no need to pass props or callbacks if you're changing anything. So this means that if there's a parent that has many child components, you don't have to pass it from child to parent to parent. It's just automatically there for the component to use. And thirdly, with persistence, because the store is just a large JavaScript object in the center of the app, it's very, very easy to keep track of all of this. And you can just take a copy of the store at any point, persist it into local storage or anywhere else you're using the mechanism for persistence, and it's perfect. And then also with Redux, there's the time traveling debug feature, which because the store state is immutable and you're always making copies every time you change anything in the store, there's a clear timeline of all the different state changes, which is fantastic. And it means you can just jump between every single little different change, and it allows you to kind of pinpoint exactly where there's been a break in your code or just if something wasn't working right. And then with that in mind, with testing, because everything's done with pure functions, and what pure functions are in a sense is with a function, if you put an identical input in, you'll always get an identical output, which means if you had a function like add and you put in 1 and 3, you're always going to get 4, not in a million years are you going to get a million. So it's very, very easy to test with unit testing. So a quick example of this would be an e-commerce shop. In an e-commerce shop, you could have a store, you could have the store, you could have the storefront, you could have the admin page, and you can have a backlog. And all three of those components would like to know when the stock changes, i.e. a user buys something. So how this would happen in a normal React project is when that's updated in the component where the user has bought it, that state would get passed up to parent to parent to parent, and then the top level parent would pass that down to all the components that required that information, which is quite tricky because it means that all the code is deeply coupled together, leading to spaghetti code. But on the right hand side, you can see React with Redux. And what happens here is when there's a state change, this is sent to the store, and any component that has a selector listing out for changes in the state, they'll automatically re-render with this new information. So I have thrown about quite a lot of jargon words here, but I'm going to go over them now with the Redux concepts. And first off, you get actions. Actions, their foundational element, is just a plain old JavaScript object. And in a sense, all an action is it describes something that can happen in the application. And then hand in hand with actions, you get action creators. And that's just a function that creates and returns an object of that action. And as you can see on the screen, following back to the e-commerce store, you could have an action of type increment or an action of type decrement, which could be talking about the stock where you're increasing it. And anytime a user buys an item, this would get called and that would get dispatched to the store. And down the bottom, you have the action creator, and you have a function called increment that returns an object of increment, but it wouldn't just need to have type. If the action was called increment by, you could have type and a payload, and the payload could be a number of any value that you're wanting to increase or decrement or decrease the stock by. Following on from that, you get reducers. Reducers are just functions, and these functions just listen out for action types in the store. And if the type of action that's sent into the reducer is so far we'd have like increment, when it finds that case, it returns the logic and updates the state of the store at that point. And just following on from what I said previously, if you had a type and a payload, instead of it having state plus 1 for the increment, it would be state plus whatever the payload would be. And a fun wee side note, the actual name reducer comes from the array.reduce method, which is quite a cool wee tidbit. And then finally, we have the store. And like we've been saying over the course of the presentation, the store is just a centralized object that holds the state of the application at any one point. It's just there. And the store has 3 methods. It has getState, it has dispatch, and it has subscribe. The getState, very simple. It just allows you to access the current state of the store at any point. And we're not going to be going over it in this presentation, but just so you know, there is a thing called selectors, and selectors just point to specific points in the store and return that information. So if you had like an e-commerce shop, then you could have a selector that returned items, and that would just be in the format store.getState.items. And if that was an array of strings, you'd retrieve that all, and that could be used for potentially the storefront where you're just wanting to display to the users what you have for sale. So with a dispatch, the dispatch in its sense, and the easiest way to explain it, is that triggers an event. So an action is the event itself, and then the dispatch is what actually allows you to send a function to the store to tell it to update, to look for a reducer that follows that action, and then do the logic behind it. And then finally, you get subscribe. all subscribe does is it allows you to subscribe listeners, and a listener is just a function that wants to know when the state of the store changes. For example, a listener could be a function that's updating your local storage for persistence. So the persistence would like to know when either a stock value changes or a user's balance changes, and it would like to know because when the user goes off the page and then jumps back on the page, they don't want to see the balance that they had previously because it will cause a little bit of confusion and a bad user experience. And then finally, we have a Redux in Action, and this is just a complete overview of all the concepts we've talked about previously, and I'll just let it go around a wee bit. But with the UI, you'd have the click withdraw 10, and then that goes to the event handler, and the event handler would take the action object and dispatch that to the store. And then when it's going into the reducer, it takes a copy of the store at that point. And in the reducer, that's where it actually updates the store, but immutably because it's taken a copy. And yeah, if you have any questions, we're going to jump on to Tom with the lab, and we'll take questions during the lab or after, just whenever you want, and hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Charlie. Fun stuff now. Let me just put the mic on. We all good, Jake? Yeah, good. Good, cool. Just double checking the audio there online. So if you want to go to this website, https://lab.devopsplayground.org/. Post in the YouTube comment section if you can't see this, and Jake will send you a link. Our tech support. No, okay. Our tech support will send you a link. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, so once you're in here, you just want to put in your name that you signed up with this through. So you will use your meetup username. So for example, for me, it was Tom Broad. For you, it might be something different. Well, it will be something different. It might not. So you should get to a page that looks like this. Once you put in your username, be good to go. And once you've done that, if you want to also, if you've got a GitHub account, you can go and open the repository with the nice README on it. The README is also in the IDE, which we're going to talk about in a sec. It's just nicely formatted on GitHub, so I find it quite nice and easy to have them side by side, but that's up to you. People online, let us know if you have problems, but in the room, I'll wait till everyone gives me a thumbs up, because I know this can sometimes be the longest part of it all, while people check their meetup usernames. The guy joint running the playground is in. That's a good sign. First time, yeah, well played. Thumbs ups? Thumbs ups? Not yet. Yep, yep. You guys in? Just waiting, no worries. Yeah, yeah, cool, cool. Yeah, the Wi-Fi's not great in here. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Is that usually people's first last name?
Usually first, last name. If not, try just last name. Is there a query online? Okay. If not, perhaps message Patrick, because I know he has access to the database, so might be able to do stuff. You'll see, once you're in, you'll see 2 links that you need. Well, 3 links ideally. So you've got the GitHub, which you can click and open like I have here, down here. And then you've got 2 things. You've got an IDE and a terminal. The way this is built is using an Amazon EC2, if you're interested. And the terminal is basically a container running on the EC2. So this Wetty container is what it's called. This is the first link, and it's the IDE. So this is effectively your terminal. for those Mac users. So you can just use this as you would use a terminal. And then your VS Code is just a container running on that instance. So it'd be equivalent of having a VS Code instance running on your computer. But it's all good and it will be fine. Is anybody still waiting? This is usually the longest part, so we give like 5-10 minutes for it, just like there's no stress. I could do with a little podium for my laptop, so I can stay up. I'm going to get that box over there. Yeah. No, I'm all right. Oh, sorry if you're online and that was really loud. Super pro technology. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay. You in? Cool. You in? No.
For the terminal.
It should be state with a capital S.
Yeah.
No?
You're in?
Yeah.
Well, you need sudo.
Oh, it just.
Yep. So once you're at the stage where you have typed in your password, if everyone is at that stage, we're just going to run the cd command to move into our work directory. And then we're going to run it one more time, and we're going to go into our managing state, global state with Redux directory. At this stage, we're ready to run the playground. So the first stage is to run an npm i, and this is just going to install all of our packages. The goal of this playground is actually to build this app. We've been talking about lots of Redux. We're not building Redux. We are building Redux, which is Redux without any packages, because I thought it'd be quite a fun thing to do. So once you've done npm i, you want to run npm run build css. Sorry, I should have said that quicker. And that will not run. Pardon? Run build styles. Thank you, John. That's a mistake on the README. Apologies. Okay, so once that's built, we are ready to start. The first thing we're going to need to do is on the README, we're going to do step 1. Everyone thumbs up if you're ready, or just shout at me if you're not, and we can wait. If you've done npm run build styles. Yeah.
npm run what?
It's npm run build styles, sorry. Like colon styles. Yeah, sorry, the README needs to be updated here. That's something I changed last minute. Don't change things last minute when you're presenting. This is always the hardest part. After this, it will be smooth for everyone, so don't stress.
We could do CD.
Oh.
Do you want me to have a look? Yeah. Cool. We're just waiting for one more person to do a couple of bits to download, and then we'll carry on. Online, hope everything's okay.
Do you do npm on build, update on npm install?
Yeah, you want to run the npmi because npmi. I mean, if you're interested, you can go into the Visual Studio Code and have a look at the package.json while we're waiting, and you'll notice that there are very few dependencies. There's a live server dependency, which means that it's going to run our application on our EC2 for us, and then we've only got TypeScript, Tailwind, and Prettier. we don't actually have Redux or React installed, and the point of that is to show that the concepts Redux uses is basically just plain JavaScript objects. It has nothing to do with, like, you don't have to use packages to build this stuff. We're ready to go. So step one, the first thing we need to do is, as Charlie mentioned, everything in Redux is effectively just a large object called the store. So our store is made up of a few things. It's made up of our state, our listeners, our subscribe, and our get state, dispatch, subscribe, and get state. We're going to go into each one of those in a bit, but effectively what we want to do is we want to write a function that is going to build our store for us. This is useful if you want to have different instances of the store rather than just one store. So for example, testing, you want to like recreate your store. So inside store.ts, we're going to start coding. So write out all of this code, or you can copy it from the README, which is much simpler. And as you're typing or copying, I'm going to talk you through each of these lines. So the first thing that we're doing is we're defining it, and we're passing it a reducer and initial state. The reducer is, as we've discussed, the pure functions that we need to manipulate the state. Then what we do on the next line is we have our store object. This is where everything's stored. All of our state is stored. So in here we have two properties. We have initial state and listeners. We also have three methods: dispatch, subscribe, and get state. The first thing we can talk about the ones that have been defined. So state is going to be initially set to initial state, because when we're passing in actions to manipulate the store, we always want to have that track of history. We always want to give it something to start with. So we're going to pass it the initial state. What get state is then going to just return store.getState. That's just a basic pub sub like object. Get something from the state rather than just defining it specifically. And then we've got our subscribe action, and this is quite an interesting one, because this is something that if you use React you don't actually do. This is just something built under the hood. So our store.subscribe is going to take a listener. Our listener is basically just going to be a function, and it's going to pass that function into an array of functions. And then in our store.dispatch, you'll notice that it takes an action. It's going to log the action so we know what's being passed to it. And then it's going to, for each of those listeners in our listener array, it's going to call that listener. So that's how React sort of, that's how Redux and React work together to listen to your different components. And then obviously also we need to define reducers. So our store.state equals reducer store.state action. What that's doing is it's going to set the initial state without setting the initial state, because we want to always pass in a function to do that. The next thing we're going to do is we want to define our types. So in type.index.ts, we can take our types. And then step 2 is creating our initial state. So like I've already said, we create an initial state. Usually this would be where you use like a Redux thunk action, which is going to call an external API and then update the store based on that external API. You'll notice that I've got something called api.ts. So I've just mocked an API in an array. So our initial state is going to have two things. It's got our book list and it's got books in basket. So we're building an e-commerce store basically. Our book list is going to be the books that we can buy from a supplier. So that's what you would call on the API. And then books in basket is going to be defined by us for the books we want to add into our basket when we add them on our store. So if you take this initial state and go into store.ts and pop that down there. And then obviously we want to define the types as well, because this is TypeScript. So this is sort of, you can see from the TypeScript code what we would be expecting to pass in. I don't want to get hung up too much on that. But very, very, very quickly, everything is basically a book, which is an ID, title, author, and quantity. because we want to know how many books we're adding to each, either the supplier list, removing them, or adding them into our basket. That will make more sense in the future. Cool. So we've got our store. We've got our create store function, and we're setting our initial state. We now want to create actions. So actions are what you pass to your dispatch in order to manipulate your state. So like Charlie mentioned in his presentation, you want to have an action creator. So that's what we're building now. So these are functions that are going to be passed into our dispatch, which then manipulates the state. So we can take this block of code and pop it in here, just underneath. And then again, we've got our state, our types. So our action type takes a type and a payload, as Charlie has already said. The type is going to define in our reducer which function should be run in our switch case. And the payload is going to be the data that is passed to then update our state. So we'll pass that in to our types.ts here. Cool. Now the fun part, to create our reducer, if everyone's keeping up. So our reducer is, like we've said, is the way that we update the state in our application. So update the state of our store in application, sorry. So we want to take the reducer, we give it the previous state, which is why we have to set the initial state, and we pass it an action. And then based on that action type, we will run a different function, and those functions are effectively what we call in shorthand reducers. So we want these to be in store.ts. Cool. And then we have our reducer type as well. So like we've said, we have a state, which is our store state, which is in our types file, an action, which is our action, and it's going to return a new store state. And that's what this types.ts does. So our store state, effectively the first thing we copied in, and our action is the thing we just copied in there. Finally, for this first build that we're going to run, we want to have a way of creating the store. So we obviously have the function, but we don't have a store that exists yet. We've just got a function that we can call. So we're going to call this function. So inside index.ts, so outside of the types file, in the app file, the index.ts file is where we're going to do all of our logic. So in here, we have a store which is equal to calling the create store function, in which we're going to pass it the reducer and our initial state, which is a function, which is going to be called to update the create store function. This is all going to be imported, so if you want to uncomment the imports as well in index.ts. So now we've effectively got our functions, we've got a way to call the store, create the store, we've got a way to call the creation of the store, but we don't have components, so we don't have anywhere to run this. So what I've done is in helpers.ts, don't read into it too much, I've built the boilerplate code for how React would run this for you. So when you create a new component, I've built some code that basically creates a list of things and divs. Sorry, I've lost my words. It creates a load of different components for you in a list. You'll see it in a sec, and it'll make more sense. It's hard to explain without visuals. But to build these components, we need to call these. So it's a function that's going to build as a component. But to call this component, we need to go into our components.ts file, and we need to call, in step 6, the function that's going to create the component for us. Sweet. And then going back into our index, we can uncomment in here as well to stop those errors. And then we can uncomment inside the helpers.ts file to help out all of our imports. And then inside our index.ts file, where all of our logic is happening, we need a way of basically rendering the initial application. So we need to call store.getState for the original book list. And then we need to set our subscribers equal to the list updating. And this is for our component that we've got the data for to update. So you want to chuck that in here. And then with that all done, I've got red in my store.ts. Oh, yeah, uncomment all of the imports if they're red. And that should be what we need to run the initial build. So to run a build, it's TypeScript, so we're going to run npm run build, which is going to run tsc, which is going to build our files into JavaScript so it can run in a browser. So we're going to npm run build, and then npm run start. And we should see something in our browser. So, like I say, this is running on EC2 instance, so they're HTTP, and then the local address, port 8080, won't work. We're going to have to run this through whatever your panda is. So, for example, mine's funnypanda.devopsplayground.org, and then it would have to be :8080. And you should see something, unless it's gone horribly wrong. We see something. That's good. There's no data though. That's not so good. There we go. Yep. Pardon? You didn't get this data? You got it now. Okay. If that didn't work for you, you can run a git checkout origin/build1, and then run the same commands: run build, npmi, run build css, run build, run start, and that should have the up-to-date code at this point in the playground. I'll give everyone a sec. We're about halfway through now, so we're making really good time. So take your time, play about with it, and then we'll come to the fun stuff.
Jim from CodeWorks says he's happy to see you here.
Oh my God! Hey Jim, how you doing? I didn't know. That's so cool. I thought of a couple of CodeWorks people. I was hoping some CodeWorks people would join. Hey Jim, and hope your wombat's doing well. Inside joke, sorry. Hope you're learning loads from me. Reach out to me after this. Is there any other CodeWorks people shout out? I'd like to say hi. Is it the imports? Yeah, I know. I was trying to think of the best way to do this.
I thought I had done them all, sorry.
If anyone's interested in any of these books in the book list, I don't have a supplier, but you can look them up. Charlie said he can get them for you, so let us know after this and he'll send you a copy for a good price. These are some of our favourite books as an office. We sort of did a whip around for our favourite books, and these were recommended by a few people, so hope you enjoy them. You don't know them? start your list for you.
8,000? 80 it's funny panda.
It's not Funny Panda, it's your Panda. So if you go back to your labs.devops playground, sorry. Well, it is because you would just access my one, but you should access your own one to see if it's working. So for me in here it says Funny Panda, but for you it will say like Sweet Panda or there's so many different pandas. I don't know what they all are. You can only name Sweet and Funny. They're the first. Happy Panda, Party Panda.
Panda.
I don't think there's a Sad Panda.
No, sad panda.
That'd be a bit of a depressing one.
Ah. Pandas can be sad.
They can be sad, yeah.
NPM one stuff, yeah. Don't look like that. Mine looks like that. I don't know what's going on. There's a lot of CSS going on there.
You got it?
No, I don't. Oh, is it one of those styles? Okay.
Yeah, if you look in the package.json, there's a couple of different ones you've got to run. Yeah, sorry, that's my bad. It's not CSS, it's styles. Check the package.json.
Build styles. Ah, okay. Double quote. Yes. Oh, no. I get it now.
Cool. If we're all good to move on, just like stop me if we're not, but move on. So what we've got here is if you have this running for you. If you want to open a terminal instance, so Command Option I if you're on Mac. If not, Control Inspect. So Control click and inspect, or on Windows, I think it's still Control click and inspect. And then you want to click the console button here. What we've done is if you were to add one of these books to your store, you can click Add, and you'll see the state. We'll see a couple of things printed to the console. So the first thing we'll see are two actions that are going to be dispatched for us. So the first action is basket/add book, and that's going to be adding a book from our into our books in basket, which is part of our store, which in our store.ts, in our get initial state, you can see that we've got this books in basket. So that's what books add book basket/add book is going to do. And then this is going to return a trackable instance. So this is going to return the new state. We haven't set anything. Our reducers don't do anything at the moment. If you were to look in store.ts, our reducers just return our previous state. So this is just going to return. It's going to call book/add to basket, return the previous state, which is the first thing we pass in anyway. And then we've got another action, which is supplier/remove book. So what we're achieving from this is when we click add to basket, we want a quantity of one book to be removed from the supplier list and a quantity of one book to be added to our basket. That's all this app's going to be trying to do. So let's try and build the functionality for that. So in our step 7, fill in reducer functionality. Inside our store, what we want to do is from lines, for me it's 53 down to 59. So everything above the default to the top of the switch. We want to take this piece of code and pop it in here. So I'll wait till everyone's sort of ready. But we want to go down to there. And this is going to be replacing this code. And then paste it. Save. And effectively, this is our logic. So the first case is supplier list/remove book. So this is going to be checking a couple of different things, but it's effectively going to be seeing if we have the book to start with. So we've got a find book function here, which is going to check the IDs in the payload passed across. And if the ID of the previous state matches the ID of the payload, then it's going to say that the book's found. And if the book's found, what we want to do in the supplier list is we want to remove a quantity of 1. And what we want to do in the basket list is add a quantity of 1. So we've got two different actions, two different cases, so two different reducers, sorry, which are two different cases in our switch statement. So the first one is going to remove the quantity of 1, and the other one is going to add the quantity of 1 to the books in basket. So after running that, after copying this code in, you can run build again. Annoyingly, I downloaded live server when I was doing it on my local machine, but EC2, I can't have two terminals open, so you need to cancel it. npm run build to build it back into JavaScript, and then npm run start. And what we would be hoping at this point, if you refresh your page, is to be seeing in our console log statements, we would be seeing the arrays going up and down. So we can clearly see that our state is two things. It's our book list and it's our books in basket. We want to see that when we click one of these books, that the quantity is going down, and the quantity of books, the quantity of the book list is going down, and the quantity of the books in basket is going up. And you can see that here is the case. You'll also notice that the quantity is going down on our supplier stock, and that's because in our listeners array, which I alluded to earlier, in our index file, which I've lost, in our store, but it's been called in our listeners. So in here, when we dispatch an action, when we call the store.dispatch, it's going to loop through our listeners array, and it's going to call the function that's been passed in. And our current listeners array, you'll see in index.ts, is only this function, so render supplier store list. And render supplier store list is something we set in components.ts. And render supplier store list uses the boilerplate code in the helpers functions, the helpers file that I built, to render that supplier store list on our right-hand side. So every time we click add to basket, you'll see that go 10, 9, 8, 7, because we're calling a function that's re-rendering the page every time. And that's one of the benefits of Redux, is that it handles re-rendering only certain components. Obviously, in mine, Redux, it doesn't have all of the fancy things like React would do for you. So it's just going to re-render everything all the time. So this isn't optimal. Don't use it at work. I'm not liable for you getting fired. Cool. I've rambled. So we can see things going down, we can see things going up. Yes? See? Cool. If that didn't work, you can git check out origin/build2, run npm I, npm run build :styles, npm run build, and npm run start. And then that will give you where we're up to now. Cool. So we have this functionality working, that it's going down, and it's adding in our state, as you can see, books in basket. We can see that the quantities are going up, but we don't have anything displaying on our front end. So we need to now write our components that are going to render this information on our front end for us. So this is what I was just describing. In our components.ts file, we call a function that renders a component for us. So if we go back into components.ts, we will render both the customer basket, which is the green customer basket on the left, and the customer dashboard, which is the blue customer dashboard on top. And we want this inside our components.ts file, underneath line 5. Save that. This won't be enough to render it, because obviously to render a component, we need it in the listeners array. So we want to make sure that we're calling these functions and they're being passed into our listeners array. So we want to call them every time an action is dispatched. And to do that, we have to make sure that it's added into the listeners array. So you want to take the 2 lines. You can copy all the code and just replace it in index.ts if you like, or you can, basically it says we're just adding these 2 lines. So in our index.ts, we're just replacing this store.subscribe with the new one, but it's effectively just adding these 2 lines. And then what you want to do is uncomment the imports as well, so that they're nice and imported. And good old TypeScript, npm run build. Oh, with not a comma for the M. And then npm run start. Back to here. What we would expect to happen now is when we add them to our basket, we would expect them to render. They do. I don't look like an idiot. Good. And we can add as many as we want to these, and they'll sort of have a play about with it. Flick across. Ooh. But when we press remove basket, nothing's going to happen because we haven't set up the logic to remove a book from our basket and add a book back into our supplier list. We want to flip those quantities on their head and handle that piece of functionality instead. But I'll give everyone a second to sort of get caught up before we continue on. You guys stuck? What's going on?
I'm trying to just get to the origin build too.
Okay. Should be state. You can just press tab. Yeah, there's a G. Git checkout origin slash build 2 dash 2 TWO.
Oh.
Yeah. Nice. And then you want to do npm run build styles. npm run build. Oh, you need to uncomment everything, I think, inside the that's my bad. We found something on origin build dash 2. You might need to do some uncommenting. It'll probably be in helpers. Oh, it's still loading. Yeah, Wi-Fi's not great in here. Yeah, it's just the imports there. That's my bad. Nice. npm run start should get you. You're just going to need the panda name and then the colon. Firm panda. 8080. How's everyone else doing? It's not slash, it's colon.
There you go.
Sweet. Everyone else okay? No.
Yeah, I don't know
What's erroring?
I don't know actually. It's just red now.
Might hit leave from the top and then might say. Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
No,
why
it's
is
got
it
one
still
error.
red?
One error. Go down a bit. Is there one too many of these?
Too many of what?
The brackets, curly brackets. This curly bracket here, maybe. No.
I think I want 2 less. I think mine's got an additional bracket.
You good, Alex?
For now.
Okay.
So I got 2
Oh.
and brackets.
If not, you can do the checkout origin.
No, it's red.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. Final step, everyone, you'll be pleased to know. It's not a long lab, but it's just a proof of concept, and then you can We usually leave these instances open for like a 24 hours. So if you want to keep using them, or go on GitHub and check out the GitHub and look at this yourself, or ask questions at the end, that's all good. So the last thing we want to do is, obviously when we click this remove from basket button, we want some functionality to happen, but nothing's happening even in our console. So what we need to do is we need to add the actions that are going to enable us to do this. So inside our store file, store.ts, we want to add these underneath the existing actions. And then we need to add the reducers that are going to listen for these types to then perform the functionality. So we take these two cases and we want to pop them underneath line, for me it's 134, it would be the line above default in your reducer, and you just want to paste them in there. And then fun times, we get to run npm run build, you guessed it. And then npm run start. Now I don't think this is going to work, and that's a good thing, because I know why. Aha, yes, it doesn't work. And why doesn't it work? It doesn't work because of something that I built in the helpers file. So if you go into the helpers file, you will notice that when we click a button, so we have a basket button dot add event listener. This effectively, what it's doing is it's going to call our dispatch for us in our store. So this is the point it's going to call it. So we need to just uncomment this code. And then uncomment the comments at the top, which are the imports. And then we run it, the build again. And then we should have some functionality, which we do. Woohoo! And you can play about with that as much as you want. And you can see that every time we change pass an action, it passes an action. And this is one of the benefits of Redux, which is what Charlie was saying in his presentation. It gives you this whole history. Oh my goodness, that HDMI cable. It gives us a whole history of our state. And if you use Redux rather than my Redux, you'll be able to click the state at different points in time and go back to how the state was at that time. And it just enables you to track that much more easily. Oh yeah, there we go, right at the end, on comment lines 58 to 74 in helpers.ts. That's read the README. Yeah, thank you all for listening. That's all I wanted to show you. I hope that sort of showed how easy sort of global state management is under the hood. It is effectively just JavaScript functions and JavaScript objects. And I hope you learned something today. Any questions, let me know, online or in person. Yeah, I'll open the floor for like 5 minutes, but ask any questions you want. Jake, any questions online? No? Cool?
No, all good.
Are there any questions in the room? No? Okay, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening if you're online. Goodbye.